Hey you guys, what's up? I'm Ashley from heavenathome.org, and this is the Heaven at Home podcast, where my goal is to encourage you in your personal growth journey while being open, honest, and owning my story. We have faith-based conversations and tackle a bunch of different tough topics. Check out the description to follow me and learn more. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. Let's do this. Hey you guys, what's up? Long time no talk. I know it's been a minute. There's a common thing that I tell my daughter often when I'm taking her pretty much anywhere because she is very excited and easily distracted. I often tell her to watch her step, to watch where she's going, especially when we're going down the stairs. Sometimes she'll just be so excited to be leaving the house and she'll start looking upwards instead of looking at the stairs, looking at her feet. And so I often tell her, watch your step, watch your step, watch where you're going. And so the title of this episode is Watch Your Heel. And I kind of like that it's a play on words in that aspect because the underlying theme of this topic is to watch your step, to watch where you're going, but more specifically to watch your heel. Not the heel of your foot, but to watch the way that you're healing through difficult things. I'm in the process of creating a blog post just based on my own personal experiences, based on things that have helped me, things that have been recommended to me throughout the last couple years. And I'm not finished with it yet. It's called How to Cope with a Divorce You Don't Want. But I want to share just the intro of the post that I'm writing because everything that I'm going to share is very real. It's very sensitive. And I just want to make sure that this part of who I am, this part of what I believe about marriage and God in marriage is solidified. Because everything that I share in my broken places might sound contradictory, but I just want to affirm this. So I'm just going to start with this verse. It's Ephesians 5:25 through 27, and also verse 32. It says, "And to the husbands you are to demonstrate love for your wives with the same tender devotion that Christ demonstrated to us, his bride. For he died for us, sacrificing himself to make us holy and pure, cleansing us through the showering of the pure water of the word of God. All that he does in us is designed to make us a mature church for his pleasure, until we become a source of praise to him, glorious and radiant, beautiful and holy, without fault or flaw. Marriage is the beautiful design of the Almighty, a great mystery of Christ and his church." And so I just wanted to be clear that I know marriage is important and God's intention for marriage was good. And people are imperfect. We fulfill our roles in marriage imperfectly. But I truly believe, or I deeply believe, that when we invite God into the middle of all that, that leaves a lot of room for him to do what marriage was intended to do. What the word says that marriage was designed to do, which is to take us through a process that in the end or throughout makes us more holy, more pure, more mature, and in a lot of ways reflects the way that God loves us on earth among people. So I really do think when marriage is done right, it's a testament to Jesus's love for us and love's ability to actually transform not only the other person, but us ourselves. That's important. And even still to this day, I am forcing myself or urging myself to go back to that truth, even though it's not a truth I've lived for myself yet at this point. So this is going to be one of those topics where I'm going to reluctantly throw myself under the bus so that you can learn from my mistakes, internal and external mistakes. I remember I've had several conversations actually with people in my circles. I had a conversation recently with one of my closest high school friends, with couples, with mentors, about how I've been noticing my values for marriage changing. And I've had a pattern. I've been noticing this pattern within myself, a pattern that helps me cope, a pattern that helps me to stop grieving what I feel I've lost. And I almost dared to say that this pattern has helped me to be resilient in some ways, but it's not necessarily healthy. And so this pattern that I'm talking about with a lot of things is internalizing an idea or saying to myself that a thing that matters, a thing that really matters, actually doesn't. So things like relationships, things like marriage, saying that things don't matter as much as a way to just keep moving forward. And not even with that, also with this past holiday, it was Thanksgiving, literally yesterday. And on the external, I just wanted to stay home and I just wanted to be alone and I wanted to do nothing. And I wanted to treat Thanksgiving like it didn't matter. I wanted to just act like it was another day, just a normal day off from work so I can clean the house, reset, be productive, do something else, take a nap. What people can see and what I'm trying to project and what I believe to an extent was that, okay, like it doesn't matter. Thanksgiving doesn't matter. But in the end, at the end of the day, after I joined my friends and their families for the holiday, I was just looking at a picture of my daughter and I noticed a pain creeping up all over again, obviously. And I think a lot of people anticipated that. I believe I anticipated that. I was in my feelings earlier last week, just thinking about it. But it's stuff like that where I almost want to compare it to an eggshell, unless there's another example of something that's hard on the outside and soft on the inside. But I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm like an eggshell. And I've built walls and defenses from pain by changing the way that I demonstrate my values. So, for example, just with the Thanksgiving example, I value the holiday a lot, possibly more than other people. And other people can say, oh, well, at least you have Christmas, or, oh, well, you'll have next Thanksgiving. Those ideas alone, for me in particular, were not enough to take the pain away. And I do consider myself to, unfortunately, be the kind of person that's 100% or none at all. And in my healing journey, that is not working out for me at all. But, so instead I build this shell or this wall and I say, okay, fine. This day doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Because it doesn't matter, it doesn't hurt. And so that's a Thanksgiving example. When we can use marriage as an example as well, because people who are very close to me, I've been very candid for months since this process became official. And I've said, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to put myself in that position I'm never going to allow myself to be that vulnerable. And even more terrifying than the thought of getting married to someone is the thought of having a child after marriage with someone. Because at that point, that's a whole other life involved. And that's just a whole lifetime of what I would consider to be pain. And so it's very difficult to explain to people around me. Because I actually just had a conversation with someone yesterday, with a couple yesterday. And I said, marriage is just a piece of paper. Marriage is just a piece of paper. To me, it's not. But my truth, my reality, what my life has shown me is that it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't matter that I've made vows. It doesn't matter that I consider God to have been involved in my process on my side of marriage. Because in the end, it's just paper. It's just court documents and a whole bunch of legal things. And in the end, it's just paper. And one of the people in that couple said was okay, that's a normal thing to feel. But my concern for things like that, because I also I'm trying to closely monitor this, because I know that this doesn't just affect my inside. At some point, my inside is going to affect my outside. At some point, something that was I feel like this coping mechanism is a bandage covering a gaping wound, and it's not going to hold for very long. And in the end, if I don't, there's this quote actually, because I was listening to I came across a sermon, and I'm so thankful that I came across this, because I've been trying to explain to people why I care about what's going on inside me, because I know it's going to have repercussions. I don't want my feelings to manage me. I want to manage my feelings. But I came across this sermon by Chris Vallotton, and he was talking about how we listen to God, but more accurately, I think, based on what I heard from the message, was how to proactively develop your core values. Because if you don't take the time to be cognizant of them, if you don't take the time to develop them, then they're gonna develop for you. And I'm noticing that that's happening. And there's this pretty awesome comparison that he made to pilots when they're flying small planes. There are two gauges, I guess, that are in planes, because there's something about flying in a small plane that's disorienting, and it makes the pilot feel that they are climbing when they are not, so they overcompensate and end up going downward toward the earth. So he was saying, the comparison that he made was that we shouldn't be flying by our feelings. Instead, we should use our gauges. So for me, the practical implication of that, which I believe was the point of what he was saying, was that we should not be living by our feelings. We should not. There's this quote that he also says, feelings are good servants, but they make terrible masters. So saying that we shouldn't live by our feelings. We shouldn't take our feelings as truth. Instead, our gauge, our truth should be the word of God. And so I remember sharing my concern with someone I go to often for advice, and that person said, okay, you can try focusing on other areas, other relationships where you can develop, where you can be better, where you can, just be a better mother, be a better sister, be a better daughter, a better friend. And I definitely see value in that. And I think I have like some really cute ideas for the new year that I want to try practicing. But in my heart, I know that my relationships with other people aren't the area where things like my values are breaking, you know? So there was this conversation I had, trying to explain a lot of stuff that I feel that I don't know how to justify, because they can't be justified. They're coming from super broken places. And my perspectives of marriage and family, I almost feel like I'm trying to grasp at a handful of sand, and it's all just kind of like falling between my fingers. Because for honestly 27 years of my life, all I've seen, 100% of the marriages that I have lived through and seen firsthand, have ended in divorce. And so I consider my mother's marriages, I consider my brothers, my sisters, and even mine. And I look at mine and I'm like, one of the things I keep saying is like, I don't want this to affect my daughter. I don't want this to be her inheritance. But also, how could God have been so involved, and in the end it still did not matter or make a difference? And I talked with a friend, and I mentioned that similar train of thought. And she just reminded me about how awesome, I guess, it was to have God be involved to the extent that he was involved at all. I genuinely felt comforted, seen, known, loved, defended, advocated throughout this whole process. And I don't think I would have been here to this day without him. And so when I was kind of sharing my feelings along that line, she just kind of reminded me. And then in the end, I remember I had this moment where I was like, man, like, who am I? Like, who am I? Who are we that God would care so much to make his voice and his will so known to us? And I think I had that reaction because I know that blessing, that privilege is not granted to everyone. Not everyone has an opportunity to see God truly walk with them. So, but I was sharing that, and I'm like trying to explain why I could care, why I could have cared so much about something, and moving forward, I will act as though I don't. I don't know if that makes any sense. And so I think, me being the kind of person that I am, I do consider myself to be very reflective, very self-aware. I've had a lot of moments where I see my brokenness and I see the consequences of the stuff. And I remember having a conversation with my mom in September, and I was just so broken. Like, I could not stop crying. And I remember just like laying on the floor of my closet, just crying uncontrollably. And I had thoughts like, I can't even ask. I don't even feel like I'm worthy enough to ask for help or to ask for forgiveness, because I don't recognize who I am anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. God, like, I don't know why you've been so faithful to me. And then even when I consider like how loved I've been within my church community, and how much I feel pastored and led and loved, but being so incredibly broken and feeling like I have no value to add. Like I used to feel like I added value. I used to feel together enough to be able to contribute something. And now I'm just kind of like just doing everything I can to survive and not screw things up more than I already have. And so I was really wrestling with that. And I was talking to my mom and I was just like, Mom, I can't stop crying. I can't stop crying. And that was for like days. And the thing is, I've had enough sense to see things within myself. And I think it's very hard for people on the outside to understand. And so that's kind of the reason, like me going through my stuff is part of the reason that I'm sharing my perspective on this topic at all, because I'm not certain that many people even know to be reflective about how they've dealt with their trauma. And a lot of us, including myself, do not actively seek the help of a therapist. So when we're dealing, or when we're just living through our lives and we've dealt with destructive home situations with our parents, when our view of ourselves, of each other, when our view of God has been impacted, I think there are a lot of times, a lot of opportunities that we're just living our lives and we don't see the effects that going through difficult things has had on us. And so I wanted to share this because for me, it's an encouragement to anyone listening, and obviously including myself, to always make sure that we're watching what's happening within us, because number one, it's important. Number two, it's something that no one can do for us. People can see that I overthink, for example, and they'll think nothing more of it, but they won't know that it comes from a place of anxiety, and that anxiety comes from having a relationship with a toxic person. People can see someone has a very short temper, and they don't know that temper is masking, is a secondary emotion to sadness or pain or something else that's going on, and that is coming from, like, things can get very deep very quick, and people on the outside will only be able to look at the surface. To an extent, our job is to make sure that we're guarding our hearts. And there's also that verse in Psalms that says, "Search me, O God, and search my heart, know my anxious thoughts." I think it's pretty awesome that God would like to be invited into that process. He probably should be invited into that process along with a therapist. And so I guess I just wanted to give a couple pieces of advice. And these are things that I'm actively working on. Number one, which I do all the time, because I do give myself grace to face myself, even though I consider myself to be, I described it to somebody as like, it's the kind of brokenness that's not attractive. It's the kind of brokenness that people don't have pity for. Instead, they're disgusted and they're repulsed by it. For me, dealing with my stuff, I give myself grace to face myself and say, hey, like, I see this and it's okay, but we're going to work on it. So that's definitely one of my tips for you, if this is something you might find applicable to you at some point, is to be able to face your feelings without fear, and giving yourself grace for that moment, because you're going to need it. Feeling more guilty is just going to paralyze you from making any progress. So that's one of my things. The second thing is for me, journaling helps a lot. It helps a lot. Because there have been moments where I'm living my life and I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, this makes no sense. And so for me, I kind of do this internal thing where I'm like, okay, this is what happened. This is how it made me feel. And then I kind of describe that feeling with either more feelings or more thoughts or more details that can help me just get more information. And then I go further. I'm like, I think this feeling is coming from this experience. And so journaling, being reflective, being observant of our thoughts and our patterns, a lot of times, and this is part of the reason why I think it's important for us to be observant of our core values, is because when you have a habit of thinking a certain way, there's this thing called neural pathways, and the easiest way to say it is that it's a train of thought. And so if you have a certain train of thought often, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, if you have it often enough, your brain is going to go the path of least resistance, and it's going to go with the thought that you most commonly have, and it's just going to naturally flow in that direction. So like for me, in my case, if I keep saying, this doesn't matter, this doesn't matter, this doesn't matter, eventually that thought is going to become a train of thought or a neural pathway, and then all of a sudden that thought isn't going to be a thought anymore. It's going to be a core value. So just noticing our thoughts, our thought patterns, our almost instinctual emotional reactions to things is super important. I think journaling is a tool that can be used to help monitor that and learn to be observant of that. The other thing that I would recommend is doing something with what you know, starting where you are but not staying there. It makes no sense for you to gather all this information about how you've healed, how you've coped, how you've thought, how you've reacted, if you're not going to do anything with it. I think it's important to do something with it. And that part, doing something with it, might require help. And yeah, you could go to friends, you could go to family, you can go to mentors, but I think a more trustworthy, more equipped, more resourceful option is a therapist. And it's one I'm trying to actually, that's the thing I'm actually trying to do right now. I need to get on that. After deciding to do something with it, another recommendation I have, which could be at any point in this process, is just to invite God in all of it. I think there's been a lot of things that I've been dealing with. Kind of had this internal thing going on where I'm like, man, I'm too broken. But God came for the broken, and I genuinely believe that He wants to be included. There's this this topic reminded me of a movie that I saw. It's Moana, and it's like toward the end of the movie, where she, I guess, finds out what's happening. Like, there's this song that she sings, so I'm just gonna say the lyrics. She's like, they have stolen the heart from inside you, but this does not define you. This is not who you are. You know who you are. I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm having to remind myself who I am. And I'm having to tell myself who I am. because I've been experiencing a lot of cognitive dissonance, which you might be familiar with that term if you studied psychology in high school. But it's like, let's see, the definition is, it's a state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially relating to behavioral decisions and attitude changes. So for me, like, that's what I've been noticing a lot, and I've been having conversations with people. Like, I'm trying to get to a point where everything aligns and matches up again, and I'm trying to be the person that I was, who believed more firmly and more foundationally. I will say that I am incredibly thankful to serve a God who knows what's going on in our hearts, because that's not, like, kind of like I mentioned earlier, that's something people can't do for us. And within ourselves, it takes a lot of work to be able to do that ourselves. Like, for us to know our hearts, that takes a lot of work. But after having a moment where, like, I kind of shared my most vulnerable, most broken places with a person, kind of seeing their reaction, it just made me a kind of grateful. I don't even have words for that. That we have a God who actually reaches out to broken people. If I can think of a couple more tips, I will add them in the description. But I mostly just wanted to put this kind of process on people's radar, because I really don't think it's common. We need to be watching how we heal. I feel like how we heal affects not just us, but also the people around us. And for parents especially, the way that we heal can and will affect our kids in one way or another. So for me, that's another thing that urges me and challenges me, to make sure that for me, it's not just about getting through this process, it's about getting through it well. And yeah, I give myself grace, because I am not perfect. I do not do it perfectly. I am a mess. But definitely keeping that legacy in mind. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too scatterbrained or anything like that. I hope my tips help you in the future. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Feel free to DM me to send me your feedback. Check out the description below to follow me on social media. This podcast is listener supported. Don't forget to subscribe. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. I'll see you in the next one.